How are you doing, everyone? So a couple of weeks ago, the Guild of Photographers, the link is in the description, an insanely talented bunch of people, photographers in their own right. They asked me to do a presentation over Zoom, covering my photography and sort of some stories behind a lot of my images. So I started off with the journeyman and some character portraits and went on to some set buildings that you'll see a bit later on. So this is going to be part one of a two-part talk. I broke it down to the first part, and then the set builds will follow in a few days' time in the second part of this talk. So without further ado, let me introduce you to me. Yeah, that's right. I'll introduce you to me in the talk. Enjoy. Okay, hold on tight. It's a bumpy ride. Okay, this talk, presentation, whatever you want to call it, it's called From Time to Time, for the simple fact I'm trying to cram 12 or 13 years into 1 hour. And I appreciate that when you don't know someone, or perhaps you don't know their work, it's going to be a lot to digest. So we're going to keep questions, I think, if you have any, until the end, and we'll move on with the sort of the route, if you like, the journey that I've taken right up until recently, right up until the last couple of weeks. So off we go. Right. First image up is a bit of a shocker, but this was taken, actually, this was one of the first images that I decided to take in my dad's front bedroom while he was about to leave his house and move to Cardiff. And during the emptying of the house, I saw this spot, and I decided to sort of pick up some empty picture frames, pin them to the wall, and pop inside. This was, at the time, this was me showing off hugely with Photoshop. So you can see inside the pictures that there's pictures of me inside the pictures. And that forms a bit of a pattern throughout this presentation, really. You can see the small reference to Dali with the melted clock in the bottom left-hand corner. And I've added some cracks and grains to the wall. The walls in my dad's house weren't actually like that. And I've sat myself down, popped the camera on a tripod, and I've taken a picture of myself viewing these images. The image is called The Art Critic, and it was quite well received, and it sort of encouraged me to do more of this kind of work. So this character you see on the chair, that's a character called the Journeyman, and he's taken a lot of different turns and routes along his life. But yes, it's me, and I play that character right up until today, and hopefully for a few years to come yet. But this image also sets out a pattern for how I used to work with natural light. Basically, by this time, I was kind of getting confident with Photoshop to a degree. And also, I could do enough to express my artistic side. But the thought of a flash gun or off-camera flash or a strobe light absolutely mortified me. I didn't understand the settings, the sync speeds. I understood nothing. So every picture that I did, I would lean towards a source of natural light. And on this occasion, as you look at your screen, to our left-hand side, just away from the clock, there's a large bedroom window, and that casts some soft diffused light in through the net curtain that was up, and that gave me the image that you see in front of me. So that sort of kicks things off for this tour, okay? There we go. And I've jumped, I'm a little bit fatter there, but it's the same theme. It's the Journeyman, and you guys may recognize this place. It's the Manchester Victorian Baths, and I think this particular room has been seen in a number of TV shows and films, usually as a morgue or something. But here I am, and I've positioned myself this time as the Journeyman, again, underneath a skylight. So it's a natural light source. I think this image is something like 400 ISO. It was taken with a Canon 5D Mark II at the time. I think they had just come out. So yeah, I took this, and I particularly like the left-hand side of the image where you've got the doorways leading you through. Okay, so it's a little bit of a distraction, but not too much. I think it adds to the image. So this is another one of the journeyman on his travels, and he's ended up at Manchester Victorian bars. I love the sort of colours that the different tiles throw up, and the texture on the floor. But overall, it's a pretty much a straight shot out of camera. Okay, so you can see the theme here. Again, I'm gravitating towards natural light. So this particular image, this is called The Irony of Ironing. There's a quick story around this, okay? I don't know if anybody here have heard of urban exploring, this kind of stuff where you gain access legally, of course. You gain access to derelict buildings, mansions. A lot of people do it, and you do see some fantastic images. So this particular image was taken in Mid Wales General Hospital, and that's in Talgarth near the Brecon Beacons. So once myself and my friend Terry, that you see there, bear in all on the left-hand side, we got there, we went for a wander around, and we come across this room. Now, this room, again, the left-hand side, just out of shot, is a huge sash window. So that's casting in a lot of natural light again, and that enabled me to get this particular shot. Now, when we opened that door behind my head, we opened the door, we were faced with just the chair that I'm sat on and the ironing board. So in my mind, I'm trying to get creative, and I'm thinking about something that I can do. So we're looking around. Terry was too busy sort of looking out the window and nosing around for anything that he could find. And I thought, what can we do? So I came up with this idea, but of course we didn't have an actual iron. And if you were to look closely enough, there's no cable going to a socket where you can see the iron plugged in. So I improvised, and I asked Terry to sort of pose with his hands and his right hand in this position to suggest that he does have an iron. And I think it's pretty believable. And to be honest, the fact that there's no cable coming from the iron, I think that adds to the quirkiness if you take your time to have a look. Once I took this shot, it was taken with a 17-40 lens at the time, quite wide. So there's a few converging vertical lines. But what I did notice about the composition was by the time I took the image home and had a look at it, there were two people essentially in a picture, and that's it. So the composition didn't really sit right. And I figured that if we could get a picture on the wall behind, that would sort of even it up so you have a triangle, you see? So if you go from the picture diagonally down to your left, across to me, and back up, you get that triangle that you might not know, but it's a bit more pleasing to the eye. So I took a picture of a picture frame, and inside I used the free transform button to shrink down an image and pop it inside the picture. And inside that picture is also a picture of me looking back, which we'll see. By the time I brought this image out, and the image that you'll see next, this was sort of circa 2011. A couple of people started to talk, because, you could upload to things like Flickr back then, Flickr, ePhotozine, and some different sites. So I'd throw these pictures out, and it was pretty much a Marmite thing. You either sort of loved it or hated it. And to my frustration, I think more initially hated it. It didn't really do that well. I'm sure that some of you, perhaps in the past, or you are now, you could be members of photographic societies or clubs, and every time that this image went in front of a judge, they seemed mortified by it, and it'd get low marks, whatever that means now. I mean, at the time, I was quite despondent by it, but it means nothing, because it did well in places that I wanted it to do well. So this particular image is called The Irony of Ironing, and this image and this image, this one's called Watching You, Watching Me, for obvious reasons. The person in the bathtub is looking at you, and you are essentially looking at me. Literally that easy. But again, look at the pattern here. Look at the right-hand side. You can see that huge window casting in this natural diffused light. And I really like the muted sort of color palette, the pastel tones and stuff. But this room was literally, I would say, 6 foot wide. So the groove in the wall on the left and the right, where the two walls meet, on the raw file, the converging lines were literally, they were nearly sort of like tipping right in. So you can imagine, by the time I used Photoshop to do lens correcting and pulled them back out, I lost quite a bit of the floor underneath the bathtub. Fortunately, I managed to clone in a bit more floor because the original image shows the bottom of the image right to the steel feet of the bath. And again, by this time, I thought I was quite trendy, and I decided to take a picture of a picture frame and put another picture in. So basically, you can see what I've done there. I've taken 2 pictures on the day, and that is one of me looking directly forward out of the window, and then I've taken another picture looking directly into the camera. Again, this was with a 17-40 lens, extra wide, and on a full frame camera. So these 2 images started to cause a bit of a stir, or at least I would have liked to have thought so. And that got me then moving on to try and do a bit more of a continuation of a series, okay? And it was based around the journeyman. So this is at the point where I'd put myself in different places. So there's no Photoshop, there's no composite. I don't cut myself out, and I don't place myself anywhere around the world. I drive, I get on a plane, I'll do anything to get to these locations to get the shot. It's not quite so viable at the moment obviously with the restrictions and stuff, but hopefully that'll continue soon. And in the meantime, you will see some work I've done in the studio surrounding the journeyman a bit later on. But for now, I'm going to keep these visits to one location. All right, so we can sort of push on with them. That location is Chernobyl in the Ukraine. Some of you might have been there. They do tours at the moment, but I didn't quite want the generic visitor tour where you sort of pull up in a little minibus, take a picture, and toddle off to the next place. So we contacted a Ukrainian fixer that could get us into these places, and we could sort of, yes, we could climb buildings and scale buildings and have a good old mooch around. And you'll see a couple of my favorite images from there now, and I'll give you a quick description as we go. So the first one up, you might have seen this on the internet. I can probably guarantee you haven't, these Chernobyl images, you might have seen similar images, especially this room, which is a kindergarten. And yeah, bit of a somber feel to it, if you ask me. And the whole place was quite eerie. And you can imagine, I think it's probably gone a bit too far now, a bit too derelict, a bit too overgrown, where nature's sort of claiming the city back, the city of Pripyat. So with this one, again, following the trend, you can see the window on the right-hand side. I'm facing it, and I'm striking a pose that's quite awkward and quite rigid. And I think that fits to this journeyman character. I wouldn't like to see the journeyman acting funny with a smile on his face or anything else. So I've gone for this sort of pose where everything has to be spot on. What I will tell you is, through the next coming images, is check out my umbrella. Yeah, I bet you don't get that said too often. Check out my umbrella. It's dead straight. Now I'm there on my own, and I have the camera on a tripod. So I set it up. I pick a focus point. I'll focus on, say, the umbrella, and then I'll position myself back in the scene, take a few shots until I've got this right. And look, what I like about it is it's awkward, yes, but everything is in line. Everything. You've got the legs of the sort of the cribs. You've got my legs. You've got the umbrella. Everything is bolted up right. And I think, for this location, the fact that I'm rocking up at these places in a full suit with bowler hat is quite bizarre. So that one was taken in the kindergarten area. And if we push on, now this, I was with a friend, and this image, he had the idea. I was ready quite to do the old Stanley Kubrick perspective, 2-point perspective, and shoot straight down the barrel of the corridor with no added light, no added off-camera light. So as you can probably appreciate, and you guys will know, you've identified, judging by the cool shadow that's cast from me up the wall, gives it a little bit of a sort of creepy Hitchcock feel, I think. But on the left-hand side, just outside those doors, my friend Andy is there with a speed flash, and he's pumped a bit of flash in, look, and it's cast that light, that hard light, as if the doors have just burst open. And I really liked that. And to be honest, that sort of set the tone, really. And I realized that I'm going to have to sort of embrace embrace lights really, and things change. So there's no better way than to teach yourself by forcing and by error. So this was the first image out with a light, and I particularly like it. It's in a school. And we had some good images out there. I like the textures and the peel and paintwork and stuff, but you can see then, again, I was essentially looking for that natural light, but I think this works really well. Check out the umbrella, by the way. It's dead straight. Okay, next image, check out the umbrella. So this particular image, okay, guys, it's two exposures, one exposure for the inside and one for the outside, because again, I'm assuming you guys, I mean, you're obviously accomplished photographers, and you would know that by metering for the inside, it's going to blow out everything outside, and I would get just either bright light, or if I expose for outside, I'd get a silhouette or whatever. So I've taken two pictures here and blended them together. And again, I've got that awkward look. The light was better outside, even though it was quite contrasty, and trying shots inside this little chapel that was on the outskirts of Chernobyl, near the village, so just outside Pripyat. But still in the exclusion zone. The exclusion zone is something like, I think, 30 or 50 kilometers sort of in diameter. So the drive in past checkpoints is quite a thing, to be fair. So that was taken at the small, so it was actually a wooden chapel. Really, really nice. Okay, the same awkward look, looking into natural light. This is taken at the swimming pool that probably many of you seen if you were to Google Chernobyl swimming pool. Simple as that. Pripyat was a man-made city for the residents of the plant to live, and had everything there, right from Ferris wheel, dodgem cars, fairground, swimming pool. And when you actually travel there and you see where it is in the middle of nowhere, you'd realize that you would literally have to have a man-made city, sort of self-sufficient, if you like. And in this particular shot, I've come out of a doorway behind me. You can just see the white of the door frame. I've come out there and I've had this spectacular view of these huge windows and the empty swimming pool below. And I've just grabbed quite the quick shot there. Now the composition isn't ideal. I quite like the clock and myself there in terms of that relationship, but the couple of steps that lead up, I find a little bit awkward to get over, if that makes sense. But when you're forced to take a shot, this is what I was given. But I quite like it. So as we move on, we are still going through classrooms and kindergartens, hospitals, you name it. So once I walked into this sort of science lab, science class, what my initial thought with the what are they even? These sort of instruments on the right and left hand side, they weren't placed. Everything there is as seen. And I literally tried my best not to touch anything. As a matter of fact, when we left the exclusion zone, the only thing I took with me was my suit. Everything else, my bowler hat stayed in Chernobyl, and I think the umbrella stayed in Chernobyl, and possibly, Craigie, I know my shoes stayed in Chernobyl, because obviously walking around on potentially radioactive ground, even though the recommended is 6 hours a day for sort of 2 days, I think, a month or something like that, which I find a bit bizarre because the guides are there most weekends. So their sort of radiation count would be through the roof, allegedly. So I think it's more of a touristy thing now. But this particular image got me some attention from Scott Kelby out in the States, out in Florida. And this made the front cover of Photoshop magazine. And again, I've positioned myself against natural light, and you can just see that, again, the umbrella's dead straight. I'm quite awkward, but I quite like the instruments leading you in to me in front. So that was one of the classrooms. This particular one, it's not one of my favorites, to be fair. I think it's too busy, but it's in a small operating theatre. And I would have liked to have moved stuff around a bit for compositional purposes. And the fact that I've positioned myself where I have, there's a reason for that. the reason is, if I was to position myself anywhere else, I would have window light. And again, force in a silhouette, if you like, to get the right exposure inside. So again, to get the shot, I've positioned myself in between the two windows, and that pretty much limited my options. And by the time I tried to get the exposure any brighter than that, you can see on the left-hand side, two of the tiles, up the sort of yellow tiles, they are throwing bits of reflections back. And if I'd ramped it up a bit more, it wouldn't necessarily have worked. But I couldn't leave it there. I just couldn't stop, because I was looking at the light on the ceiling that comes down. I mean, it really does look like something from War of the Worlds. So I took the shot anyway. And we went from there, we went off into the gymnasium area. And again, I'm taking shots here, and I'm looking at the door on the right and the left in relationship to the basketball sort of kicker plate, if you like, because the basketball hoop had been ripped down. And I thought, do I position myself in one of the doorways? But then surely the image would be dominant on the left or dominant on the right. So I've positioned myself just off center, sort of looking up at where the hoop should be. Literally another simple shot. And by this time, I'm getting addicted to textures and peeling paint and everything else, and which is quite ironic, really, because a lot of the painted canvas backdrops you can buy these days have these textures on, and I use one myself. So it does give a very effective sort of backdrop, okay? And again, we're back in the kindergarten for this image. This image is a close-up of a wider image where there are windows on the right and the left. So there's a bit of natural light in there, but mostly what I liked were what are they on the ceiling? Like stalactites or stalagmites or whatever, some sort of, I don't know, sort of cave-like drips that have frozen in time. And yeah, the sort of the beds, the children's beds there, for some reason, I mean, I know obviously the Chernobyl disaster happened, but I mean, it just strikes me as like quite a dramatic, sad scene, really. But either way, I've positioned myself there in the middle and got the shot with the light coming in from both sides. And this is another one from in the science classrooms. And you can see this time I wasn't as lucky to have the instruments or anything leading you into the shot. So again, this time I've just placed myself on the right-hand side, just off center, and you can see where visitors have chalked their names and comments in different languages there. But yeah, what I've tried to do with this one in the edit is add a couple of retro LUTs, lookup tables that you can presets that you can buy, or you can create them yourself. So again, lots of windows, lots of natural light. And after the gymnasium, we've come to this area, and by this time, we only had 2 days there. So by this time, I'm looking for any opportunity to take a shot. So this is literally a shot of me going up the steps in the gymnasium. And I figured this would be about the best composition given the circumstances. So I think I'm around about on the thirds anyway. So I don't think it would have worked so well if I was inside that doorway. Again, going back to the image you just saw, these two windows are the windows I meant. Again, the cots, the cribs are all positioned there, but I'm sure that a visitor has positioned the dolls on every bed, because I'm sure if you're there on your own, you'd find this rather disturbing and spooky. But it all added to the mood, to the atmosphere. And again, what I like about this, I love the ceiling, the dark, oily, gritty textures, and the backdrop in front. I think they're amazing. And this one, this is the swimming pool you can see on the bottom left with the steps going in. And what I've done is I've put my camera up on a ledge from this viewpoint, looking over to where I'm walking up the steps. And I've got a remote timer, and I've positioned myself there, and obviously set the timer off to capture the shot. What I will say is that those steps that I'm climbing up there, they should have been down below as well. So you can imagine the trouble I had acting like a monkey trying to climb up there in a suit to get onto that initial platform. So there we go, guys. That was Chernobyl in a nutshell. And this part is photics in the studio. After the images earlier, rather, that I showed you, the irony of ironing and watching you watching me, I was approached by a gentleman working for photics, who asked me to be an ambassador, if you like. I don't like using that word, but either way, I thought, well, do you know something? I want to progress. I want to do better. So why not? And yeah, there we go. Before I knew it, they'd sent me some lights, some kit, some modifiers, and all of a sudden I became very scared of the potential and very scared of failing. And you'll see a bit later on how this has developed, from being self-taught, from making mistakes, from listening to tutorials, etc. But right now, this is 2016, 2016. And at this time, myself and a good friend of mine, Gez, you'll see in some of my videos, he and I decided to take the plunge and get ourselves a unit to rent every month. And it's been pretty good. Prices are cheap in South Wales. So we've got a unit, okay? It's called Skint Creative. We both work day jobs, but this is our little man cave, and we set the lights up there and we create stuff, okay? So yeah, this was the first sort of image that we created with the lights of Terry, as a sort of steampunk alchemist, if you like. So by this time we had no backdrops or anything. So we painted the wall with wishy-washy paint, and we've lit this with two strip boxes at either side. And if you look carefully at the blue, at the bottle with the blue liquid in, you can see the strip boxes with the grid on inside that bottle. And then what I've done is I've popped just high above the camera, I've popped a beauty dish down just to light up his face. You can see the shadows that are cast from the optician's glasses that I got off eBay. I think this was the start of me doing character portraits and accessorizing people and developing people so that it's more than just a portrait. I'd like people to think it's a story. Okay, so by this time, I've now invested in my first hand-painted backdrop from Gravity, and I've decided to go for the Rio Olympics were on. What year was that? Was that 2013? It might have been. But either way, the Rio Olympics were on, and I came up with this humorous portrait. And this was the start of me trying to do sort of Rembrandt lighting and trying to give a Dutch masterly painting feel to my images, of which I'm still trying to do. Yes, it's pretty much trial and error. I like the humorous touch of the armband on his arm and the skull cap with goggles. And my dad's, I think it's something like Bahrain service medal that I'd like to say that I pinned it to his chest, but no, it was a bit of double-sided sticky tape. This was a one light setup with Octabox as well. So very simple. Again, I'm just feeling my way around with the lights, okay? There we go. Keeping the same theme. This time though, I'm feeling my feet and I've added a bit of smoke. And the idea for this, this was the Fireman's Ladies Calendar 1989, a little bit retro. So for you ladies that like the Chippendales and the Firemen and everything else, this was my this was my tribute to this is the Welsh version, should we say, of the 1989 Fireman's Calendar. And again, I've just used the medal for his services to women, shall we say. And I found the fireman's helmet in a skip. So I've grabbed hold of an old fire extinguisher just to try and bring you the story. Again, another one light setup. And you can see it in the skin tones that I'm sort of pushing a bit towards trying to get this sort of yellowy, painterly feel. This particular one, again, another humorous shot. And basically, I wanted to try and get a bit of a Renaissance feel. So a Renaissance feel to give a daydreamer, a fitter, if you like, a mechanical fitter. And he dreams of he dreams of being something else, and loves the sort of the whole Renaissance thing. So essentially what he has is a huge Stilsons placed in his hands, and I've gone for a typically a Victorian pose, really, sort of 45 degrees off to the side, looking into the distance, if that makes sense. And there's no eye contact there. Again, just one huge light source with a huge parabolic softbox. So I like, for this particular shot, what I like is I like the pose. I like the relationship of the adjustable spanner, we'll call it, Stilsons technically. And yeah, the Renaissance touch was done with a tumble dryer vent hose. That cost me about £4, and I've put it around his neck and just used a clip to clip it at the back. But first of all, I've sprayed some black spray just to act as a sort of grungy, oily feel, okay? And the spark plugs, I just stole the wife's colander thing, and I've driven some spark plugs in and lit the spark plug after in Photoshop, okay? So again, looking for those sort of classic poses. Now, this particular one, I'm starting to branch out, and I'm introducing still one light, but now animals and eggs. This is called Which Came First. And at this point, yes, the chicken's live. This image was caught in camera, and it was my mate Gez's ingenious idea to burst the yolk on the egg at the time. And what you see is literally what we got, and I think is fantastic. So this is my friend Foxy. We've grunged him up a bit, and he's holding this chicken and yeah, hitting the pose. And you will notice that the medal has made an appearance again. So you've got this sort of this homeless guy, this tramp, if you like, with the chicken, and the egg stuck to his forehead. The egg was stuck with makeup glue, and that was stuck by my friend Sarah, who is a hair and makeup artist, and she sort of grunged him up and managed to stick the egg, which was real. We fried it in the studio and stuck it on his head. I really like this image, and I like the toning, but that's called Which Came First. Again, this particular one, you can see now I'm starting to make things, I'm starting to add props, and this is a story about an engineer that's invented the Aerobie mini rocket pack. In reality, it's Dennis, and he's Sarah, the makeup and hair stylist. That's her granddad. And he posed for that, and that cylinder was really, really heavy at the time. So we've strapped it to him. I've got the helmet off eBay, and I've stuck some Red Star stickers on there, and the cylinder I've sprayed gold, and I've got a couple of friends to weld on the sort of aerial with the red ball, etc. And also underneath, you'll see the tail where there's flames coming out. Now, those flames are real. It's all done in camera, and they are the sort of the candles you can get for birthday cakes these days that are rather aggressive, but they do fire off some real great flames. And we sort of sellotape one or two of those in a bundle like dynamite. And a friend of mine was crouched just out the shot underneath, ready to pounce to light those while Dennis is posing. I really like this one too. One of my favorites, it's got to be this one. It's called Sausage. And again, a genius thought by my friend Gez, where I did have Foxy here holding a fork in his hand with the sausage, but it was at that point he's got these the welding torch, etc., and he's pulling this rather stupid face. And he said, why don't we put the sausage inside an adjustable spanner? And there we go. The rest is history. So I'm whizzing through these, but these images that you see were taken with one light, okay, at this moment in time. So now we're going to move on to behind a character. I want to take it a step further now. Excuse me. I want to take it a step further, and I'm starting to create characters and stories and stuff, and then we go on to set building, okay? But for this time, I want to create a character, and in this instance, it's a fisherman, and I'm using Foxy again, and I'm showing you a bit about what goes into an image and my thought process through the test shots. I don't I don't necessarily use a meter for the shots. Sometimes it gives me a look that I'm not particularly looking for. So I'll dial in with a few test shots, and you can see my notes that I've written there. Okay, this is test shot 1. Okay, so obviously test shot 1 is bright. Look at the hot spots on his forehead. Look at the reflections in the dungarees. Okay, so I've dialed it in a bit. That's test shot 2. What I do like, you can see the word nice, is that triangle under his eye, that Rembrandt lighting triangle that people sort of, they strive for, if you like, on these this particular lighting setup. And I've made notes at the bottom for I need to go a bit darker for less reflection. But then I thought to myself, it doesn't really matter because I'm having props there that'll hide that. Okay, so the next image, test shot 3, I'm looking at posing Foxy to get the fishing rod to bend. The fishing rod is actually gaffer taped to the leg of the stool that he sat on, and you can just see Gez's hand in the picture with the fish dangling, because we really want to get the fish placed side on. It was spinning round and round and round, and you can see they keep fish straight. Do we go for the pipe in the mouth? I think so, because he's going to be holding a bowl in his hand, you see. So that was test shot 3. Now we're getting somewhere. Test shot 4, this is saying basically notes for me to feather the light, which just means turning the softbox just a little bit off the backdrop a bit more. The composition, that's going to be there. We tested it with the fish, you can see, so we can go back to that. But this time we are looking at a real goldfish in a bowl, actually swimming there and then, and you can see the reflection of the huge parabolic in the goldfish bowl. Now, I don't want that, and I think I'm going to have to clone it or try and get it as good as I can. Okay. So the final test shot, you can now see there's water in the bowl. There's a goldfish in there. That was brought up by someone where we had to sort of have the fish adjust to the temperature. It took time to do. Not straightforward. I know it looks like a humorous shot, but not straightforward. It says there, just deal with that one reflection. Okay, we've got rid of one by feathering the light. Deal with that one, just clone it out. And ultimately, in the perfect world, I'd like to get the fish to pose as well, but no chance. So you'll just see now the final image. How cool is that? I love it. Okay, so that's called A Fisherman's Tale. Again, one light. Foxy's played the part. The fish have covered the reflections in the dungarees. The fish on the left-hand side have stayed flat, and also I would say the goldfish actually posed for us, didn't he? But I really love that image. That's pretty cool. This time now, I was thinking about working with more people and lighting more people in different ways. So by this time, I've got characters. I'm telling stories. I'm taking humorous portraits. But what about if I wanted to take more than one person? So we'll look at 2 images now, 2 of my favorites that were lit in different ways. Okay, we're looking at this one, and this one's called Brass Monkeys. You can actually see Foxy on the right-hand side with the trumpet. For this shot, you're looking at 2 lights from the side and a large softbox above the camera and slightly to my left as I'm shooting, only slightly. So 3 light setup. The softbox, I wanted the softbox to be quite large just to spread that bit of light on the background. Now, I did have a few issues with reflections off the what do you want to call it? The sort of the funnel of the, I always forget the name of this instrument. Is it sousaphone? Somebody can comment and pop a comment in the chat on the side. But either way, that proved difficult in terms of reflections. And we've got Nick in the middle. What I've done with Nick is don't be afraid. I've used the liquefied tool on his eyes and on one of Foxy's eyes just to make them bulge a bit with strain. I added the bubbles afterwards, obviously, but their suits, they're a bit of a calamity, these Brass Monkeys, and their suits are covered in talcum powder that gives the sort of the feeling that they've just come out of a sort of a building that's blown up or something. So for this one, now I'm starting to light things with more than one light, etc. And you can just see where the lights are catching on the left-hand side of the tuba and on Foxy's hand and elbow nearest the right-hand side as well. Really like that shot. And this one, some of you people might recognize Pip in the middle. We've got Terry, obviously. He was my number one muse, shall we say, until he passed away in 2017. So, yeah, we have Terry, starting from the right, we have Terry in the front, Pip Atkins in the middle. He does a lot of modeling. Perhaps some of you even shot him, and not literally. And on the left, a friend of mine, Nick Walton. So we've made a bowl of soap suds up. This is taken in the studio against the back wall, and they sat in an old cast iron bath that I painted up. And this is called Tub Tales. Again, I've lit this with one huge light to the right-hand side coming in on Terry and Pip, because if you look in the middle at Pip, you can see the catch light in his eyes. And there's one long strip box suspended high above on a metal bar, just above their heads. And that you can see in reflection to Nick, who has the bath brush in his hand. If you have a look at his hand, it's quite bright, isn't it? Because that's pretty much facing, directly beneath rather the light. But this one's called Tub Tales.
So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed part 1. Part 2 will follow, and to get these notifications for new video and content, please subscribe and tap the bell for notifications, because the second part will be out quite soon.